Common Amanita myths. Let's think beyond the stories. And stay with me to the end because some of the biggest fears and biggest expectations surrounding Amanita don't actually come from the mushroom. They come from the stories we've been telling for generations. Hey Seekers, if you're new here, I'm Marlucia and I teach the science behind Amanita, specifically Muscaria, Regalis, and Pantherina, the three varieties I work with and deeply trust. Quick disclaimer, this video is for educational purposes only. I'm not here to treat, diagnose, or prescribe anything. And due to YouTube guidelines and FDA regulations, nothing shared here should be taken as medical advice. The goal is to simplify this path so you feel informed enough to work with Amanita on your own, not rely on someone else to tell you what to feel or how to heal. Let's get into it. Hey Seeker, if you've spent any amount of time researching Amanita, you probably noticed something interesting. One person says it's dangerous, another says it's magical, one person insists it's just another psychedelic, while someone else says they didn't feel anything at all. So who's right? The truth is they're all sharing their own experiences, but experience isn't always the same thing as truth. Today, I want to walk through some of the most common myths I hear and hopefully help you think beyond them. Let's start with probably the biggest one. Amanita is deadly poisonous. This myth has been around for generations. The bright red mushroom with white spots has become the universal symbol for danger. Cartoons, fairy tales, and folklore taught many of us to fear it long before we ever learned anything about it. The reality is much more nuanced. The Amanita genus contains hundreds of different species. Some are highly toxic, while others, like Muscaria, Regalis, and Pantherina, have a long history of traditional use when they're correctly identified and properly prepared. That's why education always comes before consumption. Knowing the species matters, preparation matters, and respect matters. Fear without understanding doesn't protect us. Knowledge does. Another myth I hear constantly is that Amanita is just another psychedelic. Because it's psychoactive, people automatically place it into the same category as psilocybin mushrooms. But Amanita works very differently. Its primary compounds are mucimol and ibotenic acid, not psilocybin. That means the experience, the chemistry, and the way it interacts with the body are different. It's perfectly fine to compare different mushrooms, but it's important not to assume they're all teaching the same lessons in the same way. Then there's the idea that more is always better. Honestly, I don't think that's just an Amanita myth. I think it's a cultural one. More supplements, more stimulation, more productivity, more intensity. We've been conditioned to believe that if a little is good, then a lot must be better. Nature doesn't always work that way. Sometimes less teaches us far more than more ever could. Sometimes slowing down allows us to notice what we've been missing all along. Amanita has continually reminded me that consistency and observation often teach more than intent. One myth I personally had to let go of was believing that one experience tells you everything. It's easy to try something once, decide whether you liked it, and move on. But relationships don't work that way, and neither does nature. Our bodies change, our nervous systems change, our intentions change. Even the reason we're drawn to something changes over time. Looking back, my relationship with Amanita evolved dramatically. What started as curiosity eventually became intention, and later became a practice of listening. One experience was never the whole story. It was simply the first chapter. Another common misconception is that if you don't feel anything, it isn't working. We've become so accustomed to measuring success by intensity that we overlook subtle changes. Maybe you slept better. Maybe you responded differently during a stressful conversation. Maybe your body felt more relaxed. Maybe your mind wasn't racing quite as much. Some of the most meaningful changes aren't dramatic at all. Sometimes the loudest transformation is actually very quiet. I also hear people assume that all Amanita products are the same. They're not. Species matters, preparation matters, whole mushrooms are different from heavily processed products. Every company has its own philosophy and methods. That's one of the reasons education and transparency have always been so important to me. I want people to understand what they're working with instead of simply trusting a label. The more you learn about your products, the more empowered you become. Another myth worth talking about is that Pantherina is dangerous, simply because it's stronger. Pantherina is certainly more potent than Muscaria, but potency and danger are not the same thing. Respect it, learn about it, understand it, don't underestimate it, but don't fear it simply because it's more powerful. Strength without education can create problems. Education without fear creates wisdom. Finally, I think the biggest myth of all is believing that the mushroom does the work for you. That has never been my experience. Amanita never became some magical entity that took over my mind or transformed my life on its own. What it did do was help regulate my nervous system enough that I could finally hear myself. It created space. It created presence. It reminded my body what safety felt like. But I still had to make different choices. I still had to build boundaries. I still had to practice self-love. I still had to take responsibility for my own growth. The mushroom didn't do those things for me. It simply helped create the conditions where I could do them for myself. That's why I often say nature offers many teachers. Some people connect deeply with the Amanita. Others connect with cacao, meditation, fasting, herbs, or simply spending time outdoors. None of those paths are inherently better than another. The real question isn't which teacher is the strongest. The real question is, what am I ready to learn about myself right now? Those are just a handful of the Amanita myths I've encountered over the years, but I'm sure there are many more. So I'd love to hear from you. What's the biggest Amanita myth you've heard? Leave it in the comments below because your question or myth might become the next inspiration for the next myth busting video. I love you guys forever.